did. I charged it all night on the wrong side. Okay. Hello, we're here today with Sheriff Joel Mary and Timothy Mark Cason, and I'm Brenda Nelson. We're discussing foreclosure today, and we're in Saginaw County, and Sheriff Mary is the duly elected sheriff of Saginaw County. And Timothy's house is in Bodenham, and he's undergoing a painful foreclosure at this point. And we're here today to try to clarify the relationship between homeowners who may be going through foreclosures and the role of the Sheriff's Department in that process. So thank you for meeting with us today, Sheriff Mary.
Thank you, Brenda.
And could you speak a little bit about your role?
Right. Well, again, I am the sheriff of Saginaw County, and so I can only speak for myself. I do not speak for sheriffs across the state of Maine, nor do I speak for as a member of the Maine Sheriff's Association. In this particular case, I was drawn into by the fact that Mr. Cason's property is in Saginaw County, and it was incumbent upon us to serve the writ of possession that was granted by the court. And so that's how we've become involved in this quite often. The sheriff becomes involved through the statutes. It's a statutory requirement that legal documents need to be served in hand to various defendants in certain cases. Some of these cases are actions of foreclosure in this particular case. And so our deputies executed their duties in serving Mr. Cason with his paperwork for.
What was that paperwork?
It was a writ of possession.
Okay. Could you explain more about that? What that is for
Sure.
the folks at home?
Well, there's actually quite a lengthy process in any foreclosure, as I'm sure many of the viewers are aware. There's a number of steps that go through that the property owner will be asked to go through in order to prevent a foreclosure. And a lot of these are court proceedings, and these proceedings have to be notice given, and a lot of them have certain time frames, legal requirements for amount of time served in advance of the hearing, or given an opportunity to vacate the property, whatever the case may be. Those notices are served by deputies, sworn deputies through Saginaw County. And
At the behest of the
mortgage
holder.
You could say that. I mean, they're issued at the request of the bank to the court. So the court issues the document in some cases, and it's given to the defendant.
Okay. And so, do I understand correctly that the writ of possession is sort of an eviction notice? You have to get out. What is the time frame usually for?
It basically is by statute. A homeowner is given 48 hours to vacate the property.
But that's after other notices have been given.
Right. There's a whole procedure that has to be followed. That's kind of like the last stage. There are many steps and stages prior to that.
Okay. Okay. And so there are many people going through foreclosures around the country these days. And Timothy, what was the figure that you had for Maine? How many foreclosures?
In 2010, there were approximately 20,000 foreclosures in Maine.
20,000?
Ongoing.
Okay. 20,000 foreclosures in Maine in 2010. And so this is not an uncommon occurrence, and we're trying to inform people as to what the process is and what to expect if you get in this sort of predicament, or what people you know are going through. So this is also happening around the country. Do you have statistics on national statistics?
National, no, I don't.
Okay. And so elsewhere around the country, or let me back up just a little bit. There's been a tremendous show of support for Timothy over the last, couple of weeks?
Since Thursday primarily.
Since Thursday.
Last Thursday.
To try to help him through this very difficult situation. And one of the things that has happened is that people have looked up information on the internet and have sent it to Sheriff Mary and have sent it to other people. I'm a member of Occupy Maine. I'm not an impartial interviewer, so to speak. I'm trying to be as impartial as I can, but I am a member of Occupy Maine and Occupy Brunswick, Bath Brunswick, and so I am trying to help Timothy, but we're not trying to produce an adversarial situation here. We're peaceful people, and we're trying to create peace as much as we can. And so many people have sent you emails, as I understand, with links to showing other sheriffs elsewhere around the country
Right.
who have had to deal with this. For instance, Sheriff Dart, I think in
Yeah.
Los Angeles County, was it?
Cooks County, Illinois.
Cooks County, Illinois. So Sheriff Dart went on television, and there's film footage through the internet about Sheriff Dart in Cooks County, Illinois, and his stand on foreclosures, which was basically that he is refusing to do them anymore unless he has solid evidence that proper legal procedures have been taken. So what was your feeling about Sheriff Dart and some of the other sheriffs?
Well, I actually found that quite beneficial because I happen to agree with Sheriff Dart, particularly in regards to the particular foreclosures that he was dealing with out there. So it caused me to kind of step back, pause a little bit, and make sure that we had the proper paperwork and that it was executed properly. And so I did a little bit of research, particularly in regards to Timothy's case, not just being satisfied with the writ of possession. I contacted attorneys for the plaintiff in this particular case. I wanted to make sure that they had what documentation that they had used, and I received the judgment order from the court, some other documentation that had been filed with the court, and with the Maine State Supreme Court as it related to Tim's case, based on his appeal of the order of judgment. And so that caused me to take a real kind of in-depth look. I have taken advantage of the information that has been provided to me through the Occupy Maine folks that have reached out to me, that have sent me links, that have called on my phone. I couldn't tell you, we've received dozens of phone calls here at the office. I don't object to those whatsoever. And I have taken the time to do some of this research. I understand where Sheriff Dart is coming from, and I think it would be incumbent upon any sheriff to make sure these things are done appropriately and with due diligence, and of course with due process. Right. And when I say that, I think in this particular case, that's what I was looking for, the
Right.
due process.
Right. So, so what was the result of your research? Did you feel that you had sufficient that due process and diligence had taken place, that you feel that you can proceed with Timothy's case?
One of the things that's important to remember here is that law enforcement officers are bound to uphold orders of the court. I mean, that is that's one of the key elements of our job. We have to do that. If a warrant is issued, the order is a judge says, you bring this person in front of me as soon as possible.
Right.
Our
Your job is
job
to do
is
that.
to go out and to arrest that person and bring him to the court.
Right.
If we can ask the judge for a search warrant based on due process, probable cause that a crime was committed to search a person's home, the court says, yes, you go in and you search that home and you find or look for these particular pieces of property or elements. And we do that. Mm-hmm. So we execute orders of the court. That's one of our main functions. And when my deputies take an oath, their oath is to uphold the law and to enforce orders of the court. So what I wanted to see was that this had met, Tim's case particularly, had met the legal thresholds and standards of the court. And what I was able to find out was that Tim had exercised an appeal of the judgment, and that did go in front of the Maine State Supreme Court, and the judgment was affirmed.
In other words, supporting the plaintiff, and the plaintiff being the bank?
The bank, that is correct in this particular case. And I don't question the evidence. Mine is not to question the evidence. Mm-hmm. That is up to the parties involved. Mine is to, furthermore, as I stated, uphold the order of the court. So then the plaintiff, in this case, Bank of Maine, went back to the court and got the writ of possession. And then we had to serve that, and that's where we are right now.
Okay. So I'd like to cut to Timothy now, and I'm sure Timothy has some responses to that.
Sure.
And were you aware, Timothy, that it had gone to the Supreme Court?
Yes, I did file the appeal from the lower court.
So go ahead and tell us your view of what Sheriff Mary just shared with us.
Yes, it's having the sheriff do what you did and research my particular case. I appreciate that. But one question I might have for you is, if you are presented with elements of wrongdoing or fraud, and with evidence, would you further investigate that?
Things that he may not know about
May not
as
know
yet?
about, correct, yes, because the paperwork that's in the court is public record, and anybody can go see that. And the elements that may need to be seen aren't particularly in the file.
So what, can you speak to that specifically? Are you willing to talk about that right here and now?
Yes, absolutely. I have, through my research, I've learned that banks sell the notes that people sign to investors. And once they have sold...
Is that most everybody's...
in the last 10 to 12 years, the banks will sell almost all of their notes. They'll bundle them up into 1,000 notes, give or take, and sell that package called pooling and servicing package.
Okay, and as I understand it, the note and the mortgage are two separate legal instruments.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And at that point, when they're sold to a Wall Street investor, they become separated?
They can become, they are,
They can be, or they usually are?
they are to forever to remain together.
They should?
They should, yes. They are part of the same entity.
By federal law?
Correct.
They should stay together.
Correct.
However...
They are separated when the note is sold to a security.
Okay, so that's step number one, illegal.
Correct. That whole process is an illegal process.
Yeah.
Somewhere
the selling of the note?
The selling of the securitizing the note.
Securitizing is the same thing.
Means selling to another party. The other
Okay.
party being the investors. And once the note and the mortgage are separated, the analogy I've heard others use is the note is a dog, the mortgage is his tail. The dog can live without the tail, but the tail cannot live without the dog. So once the note is sold to the investors, the tail is left behind and the tail dies.
Okay.
In other words, the mortgage becomes null and void.
So the mortgage is the tail of the dog, and that's what the original bank that made the loan is now holding. He's just holding the tail of the dog.
The mortgage agreement.
The mortgage.
Yeah.
Which has now been illegally separated from the note. And can you cite the federal law or act?
I would have to look it up. And,
Okay. I've heard of it also. I've had stuff come across my desk as well about this law, and it's in the public records. But so go ahead.
Yes, and so the bank, once they've sold it, have given up their right to foreclose. They become merely a servicer.
And is that in the law also, that they cannot foreclose with just?
Well, they don't own the note anymore. They don't own, they've sold their rights to foreclose. They don't
Is
own
that
it.
your assertion, or is that
No,
legal?
that's a legal determination. And again, it's somewhere in my vast pile of paperwork and information.
Maine law or federal law? Or
I
both?
believe that's federal law.
Okay.
That's and it's a law that all banks have to follow.
Okay. So your assertion is that Bank of Maine, who loaned you the money to buy your house, illegally separated the note from the mortgage,
Correct.
sold the note, retained the mortgage, but now no longer has, in doing that, has given up the legal right to foreclose.
Correct. If anyone should be foreclosing, it would be the investors, because they hold,
Right.
they are the holder and the owner of the note.
Right, but they're not doing that.
They're not doing that.
So, can you hear
How does that come back to me?
Right. So can you hear that we're saying that the person or the entity, Bank of Maine, that there's some serious
Right.
question about whether they have the right to
Right.
to foreclose?
And I understand where this argument is coming from, as I've been made so keenly aware by the number of phone calls and messages that I've received over the past couple of days. And that's why we have a judicial appeal process. And I know that Tim has taken his case to the highest court in the state, and that court has rationale that the bank has met all of the legal standards that it needed to meet to make this a legal foreclosure.
Right.
That's what I take from the from the judgment that came from the court. Now,
Tim has an answer to that.
I was going to ask you if you would allow me to get into a little bit of specifics about my case.
but please understand that I cannot speak for the court.
I understand. The district court is where this is held, and when Bank of Maine filed their summary judgment, I filed an opposition to that summary judgment.
And a summary judgment is basically the bank laying out their legal claim.
Right, and explaining to the court why they should get the judgment awarded to them. My summary judgment was denied or dismissed solely because I did not put it into the proper form.
Oh.
Judge Tucker denied it because he cited Rule 56H, proper form. I was representing myself as a pro se litigant.
Right. And he's one of many, many people going through foreclosure who cannot afford a lawyer. We have Pine Tree Legal Assistants in this state who are volunteer lawyers who are totally overwhelmed with all sorts of cases. So you need a lawyer in order to deal with these kinds of situations. And unfortunately, in our country, we have many, many people who cannot afford a lawyer, just like Tim, and who cannot properly defend themselves in court. I mean, is that the American way?
There is case law, and I have 3 instances of case law that basically explains. One of them is Haynes versus Kerner, 404 U.S. 519, that in a nutshell says that the court is to give any pro se litigant
pro se means you're
meaning
defending yourself.
Defending yourself. A certain amount of leniency, because they're not versed in court proceedings, they're not versed in writing legal papers, and unfamiliar with the whole process. The court is to give the pro se the opportunity to correct any of the mistakes he might have made in procedure, and especially in paperwork. The court is to see substance over form in any paperwork, simply because the pro se is not versed in writing legal documents.
Right.
And
So-
in my case, Judge Tucker did not give me that opportunity.
Right.
He simply denied my opposition.
Right. So by law, the judge should have applied leniency and understood that this was not a professional lawyer, but that particular judge decided to disregard that. And so Tim is again asserting that due process and diligence were not used.
I was not, my due process rights were denied.
Okay.
All the information was there. It was simply in narrative form as opposed to legal form.
Okay. So this was district court. What happened when it went to the Supreme Court?
The appellate court, Mr. Murray, I don't know if you've read the appeal through and through, the initial brief as well as the reply brief. But I've had two different people help me put it together, and I felt it, and they felt it was pretty solid.
Your assertions.
My assertions, yes, as to why my due process rights weren't met, and that the judgment should be returned to the lower court for trial. I never had the opportunity to go to trial. It was simply
That's
a bench
interesting
trial
also.
by the judge.
And according to Maine law, even if you are taking somebody to court over $20, you have the right to a trial.
Trial by a jury of your peers.
Right. So, and it's supposed to be offered to the citizen, not something that they have to know about and go get.
Correct.
So Tim was not offered that opportunity for a trial by jury. And what happened after that?
After the appeal was denied,
So the Supreme Court, the appellate court?
appellate court upheld the lower court's decision. I then sent a motion to reconsider, citing these extra cases of that follow Haynes versus Turner, saying that the lower court is to give me some leniency because of my inexperience of court proceedings and whatnot. But they apparently didn't believe that was correct.
Did they give reasons?
1 page. I think their decision was a 1-page decision.
And did any of it sound rational, or can you capsulize their reasons?
It's been a while since I actually read the decision, and I'd have to go back and read it to remember.
Do you remember
what they said.
your general impression of their response?
My reaction naturally was, I don't believe this. I thought I had a pretty solid argument in my favor, which is why I requested that they look it over again and read it more carefully and reconsider.
So you had the legal right to apply for reconsideration?
Correct, yes.
And then what happened? What did they respond?
And that was denied.
And that was denied also.
Correct.
So first of all, clarify the difference between Supreme Court and appellate court. Anybody?
Appellate court is where you go after you've gone through the district court or the lower courts. If there are issues that
Oh, it's where you appeal.
appeal to the higher court to look over the decisions of the lower court to see if there was any wrongdoing,
Okay.
or something that wasn't quite right. So
it's not quite to the Supreme Court.
yeah, the appellate court has the right to send it back to the lower court to basically rescind the lower court's decision and say,
Right.
do it again.
Okay. Or they can send it on to the Supreme Court?
I think so, yeah.
In the state of Maine, the Supreme Court acts as the appellate court for matters
That's
of
right.
jurisdiction within state law.
Okay.
If a case was to infringe upon federal law, they don't have to go to a U.S. appellate court, the nearest one being in the First District out of Boston. But because this was relative to Maine statutes and Maine law, it was the appellate court to overturn a Maine district court is the state Supreme Court.
Okay, so you can, I'm sure you folks can see that there's some serious questions here, and it's putting Sheriff Mary in quite a bind. How are you feeling at this point about?
Well, it's important to understand that in almost every case that's litigated, there's always two sides to
Right.
the story.
Absolutely.
And I think this case particularly there's been a demonstration of two sides that disagree over the foreclosure, basically.
Right. And we have tried to get Bank of Maine on the phone and to interview them also, and they have not responded at all.
My position is I am not an agent of the bank. I do not work for the bank. I am not beholden to the bank in any way. And because of that, I have not had any conversations specifically with the bank regarding this matter. Matter of fact, I've had more conversations with Tim and trying to understand his plight. But for me, it really comes down to what is the order lawful.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of terminology around fraudulently obtained foreclosure fraud and whatnot. Those issues are really certainly before my involvement in this. They goes to the documentation as presented to the court. I don't have any jurisdiction over that. I need to make sure that the court, everything was done appropriately in terms of getting to the court, getting the defendant, having the defendant have an opportunity. But if the court does not agree with Mr. Cason,
Mm-hmm.
as in this case, and they direct me to issue serve on him the writ of possession, I don't have a whole lot of choice.
Right. What about these other sheriffs, like Sheriff Dart?
Yeah.
And were they in your same position? Did they decide, well, there's enough question here, I'm not sure, so I'm not going to be your cat's paw?
Right. Well, it's interesting. The case is specifically related to Cooks County Sheriff Dart. His men were being asked to serve. His office was being asked to serve orders, foreclosures on rental properties in which people had been paying their rents and fulfilling the terms of their lease, and the owners of the property had not been paying for their mortgage, and so the bank foreclosed on the building, and he was being asked to kick people out of their homes that had every intent of abiding by the law and legally paying their what they were supposed to pay. So it's slightly different in this
I agree.
case.
The tenant situation is different.
The other thing which is unfortunate, I think just recently Maine proposed a law to the legislature that would have required banks to present original notes. That is correct. And Maine law does allow facsimiles of these notes.
But federal law does not.
Again, I have no jurisdiction over federal law, but I do Maine law.
Right.
And I think this was a bill that passed the House and it passed the Senate. And everyone felt that it was going to become law, and I think it would have been a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Obviously, a lot of legislators felt that it was the right thing. The governor had a different thought on it, thought it would be cumbersome, more red tape, I believe, and so he vetoed it, and there was not the will of the legislature to overturn.
Right.
And I have to say, from where I sit, that was an unfortunate.
Right.
Yes, there is law in the books that say that the bank is to prove to the court that they are the holder in due course and the owner of the note.
And is that on the federal?
Already, there are those laws on the books, but the LD 145 would have mandated that the court order the bank to do that.
So there is a federal law in place already
Yes.
that says the original note must be held by the entity that's attempting to foreclose.
Correct.
And the main law that was proposed, LD
145.
145, was designed to what? Just support that?
Support that
Federal law and extend it?
unequivocally requiring the banks to produce that original document.
Okay. So both the House and the legislature supported that bill.
The Senate.
I'm sorry, the House and the
House and
Senate, the whole legislature passed that bill, but our Governor Paul LePage, vetoed it because he thought it would create too much red tape.
It would be overly burdensome to the banks.
Overly burdensome to the banks. So there you go. So
Whereas if the bank had the documents in the first place, there would be no issue.
right. So I don't know where this leaves you, but just as an individual, I'm feeling like he has a very, very strong claim that an illegal procedure he's being threatened with that. And of course the bank still has to call Sheriff Mary and to say, okay, we're ready to move, let's go to the house, and then the sheriff and the bank or one of his deputies show up at the house, and they slap some papers on the door, and they change the locks, or they put their own locks on, and from that moment on, the former owner, or the legal owner, as we would assert, the legal owner no longer has the right to enter that property, and if he does, by law, he can be arrested as a trespasser. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Tim, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Well, this is a home, personal view, this is a home that I've been in for 19 years. I have improved the property myself. I'm a remodeling contractor.
And you've owned it since when?
I've owned it for 9 years. I've been there for 19. Divorced 9 years ago, and have owned it myself since then. And I am the one that improved the property. I am the one that created its value. And with this mortgage, I was essentially paying for my own labor.
How do you mean that?
I mean, I had to give my ex half of the estimated value of the property, and a little bit more, and then add a little bit more to take care of an equity loan that was on it, to refinance, in order to keep the house. So the total that I had to refinance for, is essentially me paying for my own labor, as if I had hired somebody to build the house.
Right. So it's a crazy situation, and we're going to wrap up here. I just want to say that there's another very interesting piece here that we want to bring out, and that we've touched on in other film footage, but that I would like to go over again with Tim at a later filming. But it has basically to do with the fact that the house has been paid for many, many times over. The original lender, Bank of Maine, or what are they called now?
Bank of Maine.
Bank of Maine.
Their current name.
okay, has been paid many times over for this home. They're not losing any money. And as I understand it, and I'll just tick off some of the ways that they've been paid over and over, and correct me briefly if I'm wrong, but let's not go into it too much right now. We'll cover it in detail at a later date, and we'll have it all on a big chart so that you can understand that there is another kind of fraudulent thing that's happening that's based on bank greed. But when you take out a mortgage, it goes to the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, the bank takes the note to the Federal Reserve, and it's called fractionalization, and they get approximately 10 times that, whatever the value of the note is. Let's say it's $100,000. They'll get 10 times that for $1 million from the Federal Reserve.
So I have yet to look into this myself. It sounds unbelievable to me, but I've seen enough that says this is actually true. So the bank, in effect, is paid by the federal government, not just the face of the note, but 10 times the face of the note. That money actually gets shifted to the bank from our tax dollars into the bank, and then also the new homeowner pays thousands in money down and is paying a monthly mortgage, and then if the of course there's mortgage insurance that has to be in there.
Correct.
So if for instance when Tim could no longer make payments because of the plummet in the economy and him not being able to get enough work to keep up his mortgage payments, at some point in there he defaulted, so to speak, and that insurance kicked in, and so the bank was paid again through that.
They get insurance payments when someone goes into default or is placed into default. They get insurance premiums. They also get tax write-offs for the end of the year, quarters.
Right. They get to write off that property and the taxes.
They are paid by, when they securitize the notes, they are paid by the investors.
So when they sell that note, which they did 3 months after after his closing date 9 years ago, Bank of Maine sold that note to Wall Street investors and made all of the money back again at that point.
The information I have a securitization audit that shows who the bank sold it to, the date they sold it, and the pool that it was in, and that pool.
How much they got for it?
Well, the pool that it was in, as of 2010, had made approximately $78 million.
So there was a pool of mortgages that were all sold by the bank at that time, and the total value of the pool, which Tim's note was in, was $78 million. So the bank made money then again.
Correct.
Have I covered all of them?
Banks do not loan money; they loan credit. There is no money. The Federal Reserve notes is what we have in our pockets. We call it, those green things we call it in our pockets called money. Those are Federal Reserve notes. That is a note, just as the note you sign for a mortgage.
Okay.
If you were to take a copy of a $20 bill down to the store and try to spend it, you'd be arrested on the spot.
Right.
Because that's fraud.
Right. But
and,
the bank.
That's exactly what the banks are doing with the notes. They're taking copies of the note and selling them.
Right. So we'll go into that more, with charts and with citations and everything. But my point about bringing that up was that I didn't want anybody feeling bad for the bank, like, oh, they loaned the money. This is not back in the 1920s or 30s when you put your money into a local bank and then they use that money to give to somebody else so they could build their home, and you had to make your payments because the bank had to you know, keep making these loans and the bank would go under if you didn't make your loan payment. It's not that scene anymore. What's that movie they show at Christmas time with...
It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy
It's
Jimmy
a
Stewart.
Wonderful Life. It's
Yeah.
not a wonderful life anymore, folks. And on that happy note, I will thank Sheriff Mary again, and I
Thank you.
hope that you will take into consideration everything that we've told you and maybe dig a little deeper. And thank you so much, Tim,
Thank you.
for sharing your story. And please, everybody, do your own research, look at your own mortgage, talk to your banks, talk to your lawyers and your congressional delegation. Let's see if we can do something about this situation. Thank you very much. Some final
One
words?
final note, LD 145 will be coming up again with the next legislative session next spring or whenever they meet the next time. So that bill will be coming up again, so please support it.
Thank you. Any last words, Sheriff Mary?
Thank you for having me on here. I think it's I welcome the opportunity to just explain where I'm coming from, and we do take these very serious.
And
Thank
I
you.
thank you also. Thanks.